I'm creating a literal library of what they called Templar Mason marks that were made on stone in caves, you know, all over. And what I've created is a catalog. I'm cataloging them because I'm finding similar ones all over, everywhere. Spain, France, Portugal. I'm finding in Brazil. I found them in Turkey, for God's sake, in Derinkuyu. I found them all over the place. And so what I'm doing is a comparative study. And another researcher friend of mine, Scott Wolter, he's really doing some serious research and taking these back to what he believes an ancient Sumerian language, that some of these symbols have been found, that he believes the Templars were actually communicating to each other through these symbols. They were not Mason marks.
Real quick, check out these statistics. Gold, it's gone up about 81% the past 5 years. The past 12 months, almost 20%. Central banks are ditching the US dollar and US treasuries and purchasing gold by the tons. Now, there's obviously never any guarantees, so you follow what the money funders are doing, what the MFers are doing. So what's the good news? Well, many predict gold is just getting started. The UBS even said it was going to go up to $5,000. Now, that's pretty awesome news if you ask me. Noble Gold Investments, their phones are ringing off the hook. It appears that everybody wants to protect their retirement with gold and silver right now. You can do the same. Noble Gold Investments can help you secure some gold to protect your future. From day one, you will work with a dedicated all-American expert. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced investor, Noble Gold Investments will make sure you get all the help that you need. This month, Noble Gold Investments will give you a free 1/4 ounce solid gold coin to add to your collection if you open up an account with Noble Gold Investments. Find out how to qualify. Their number is 1-877-646-5347. Go to leakprojectgold.com, get the free ebooks, let them know Rex from Leak Project sent you, and check out noblegoldinvestments.com. Now is a better time than ever to convert your 401 or IRA, unless it was last week or last month. Give them a call. You'll be glad you did. Now let's get back to the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear Leak Project, how the heck are you? Beautiful day today here in Southern Colorado, and a wonderful guest. We have Dr. Kathleen Bell with us. She is the author of A Grail Quest. This is the discovery of a mysterious cave in Brazil, and wow, I'm fascinated with the Knights Templar. It seems like a lot of these locations in the Four Corners and here in like New Mexico or Colorado or Utah or Arizona, there are these petroglyphs that are next to what the natives left, but these aren't left from the natives. I'm like, no, I think these are the Knights Templar that are leaving some of these. So super looking forward to this. Tell us about like what's your story? What got you into this? And thank you for being a guest here on Leak Project.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. I got interested in the Knights Templar I had been an artist for most of my life, studied Leonardo da Vinci was my primary sort of mentor. And as I looked into his background and his notes, I realized that he was into some very esoteric practices and beliefs. He was influenced by those. And I also realized that when he was living with King Francis I in France, that also King Francis was very involved in those belief systems as well. So, it just kind of, I knew that he had been involved with the Medici family, which way back had been going into the Holy Land and bringing back artifacts and things. So it just stood to reason, when I found out that he was a member of the Pai de Sion, that led me to the Templars. That led me directly to the Templars. And then I started researching the Templars, and I was having a really difficult time finding any information on them, of course, because most of the things were burned or hidden, for worried about the Catholic Church. People were just terrified of the Inquisition. So it was difficult to find information, but I was able to find bits and pieces here and there. And then in 2006, Dan Brown's film came out, The Da Vinci Code, and I was in Rome when that happened. And the backlash from the church was just astronomical. I mean, they just went berserk. They tried to sue him. They did everything in their power to try to shut that film down. There was propaganda all through Rome, try to get the people not to watch it. I mean, it was, and I thought, well, there must be really something to this. That's my immediate response. If you go to that much trouble to try to shut something down, there must be some really important information here.
Wise words.
I had already read the book, so I was already interested. And I had read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and I'd read several of the bloodline of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. I was aware of all these things. So in 2009, my husband and I, we got married. We had been high school sweethearts, and we got back together and we got married in 2009. And we took a trip to France for a month. And motorcycle. I got him a motorcycle for his wedding present, and he took me to Europe for mine. So anyway, we were on this trek, and we realized that the itinerary that this woman had, a travel agent had put together, was absolutely ridiculous. It was the great race. I mean, she didn't allow any time for sleep, let alone getting anywhere on time. So we're trying to, we're staying in this little laverie in France, and we arrive at 3 a.m. to this old couple, right, to rent their laverie for the weekend. And you just don't do that in France, right? So instead we ended up having to go to a baker and stay in a little hotel, and it was just a nightmare. So I said, okay, I'm firing this person this morning. And then we had to find an internet cafe. So, okay, because there was no internet in that little town, most of the people just didn't have it. So we had to go into Dome, France. Now, Dome, France was where they kept the Templars, where King Philip the Fair kept the Templars in preparation for their deaths from 1307 to 1314 when they were burned at the stake. So I didn't know that at the time, but when we were coming up looking at this petroglyph site in the grotto that is also in Dome, and I wasn't very impressed, one of the people from the museum came out to me and said, just looked at me straight on and said, do you know anything about the Templars? And I said, well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I have been researching. And he said, would you like to see where the Templars were held? And I said, yeah, I would love to. So he hands me the keys and he says, the dungeon's right over here. He takes us and shows us where the dungeon is, gets me the keys and says, just bring the keys back when you're done. I was like, okay. So this was the beginning of basically a little mini spiritual quest for me. I went in, I photographed everything that was inside that dungeon. All the dungeon walls were covered with graffiti that the Templars had left. And there was ever since my near death, I pick up on energy also. So there was a lot of energy, very mixed emotion energy. There was, everything from fear, depression, all the way to a sense of peace. So it was just really interesting getting to process what they went through to get to that sense of peace, because as we all know, when they were finally burned at the stake, they recanted all of their statements that they had given earlier under torture. And they basically told the truth, that they were not involved in all those horrible things, the heretical things that the church had accused them of. Basically, this stuff was coming from King Francis I because he wanted to get rid of them. So, make a long story short, 2015, I go to Brazil with a friend, and we're just hiking. We're not looking for anything. I'm not working at this point. We're just hiking, enjoying. And we had actually gone to see John of God in Abadiânia, which was about 5 hours from this place where we were. And he was not available at the time, so we decided to go up into the Chapada, this beautiful reserve, natural reserve, and go see some of the waterfalls. There were magnificent waterfalls up there. So we're coming up from one of these waterfalls, and the man that owns that camping pousada on that property invites us to lunch. And during the course of our discussion, he tells us about this property, this adjacent property to him that's got a crystal vein that meanders through the property about 2 to 3 kilometers, and it's about 1 meter high by 1 meter in width. and there's crystals laying all over and for the taking. And you can, he told us that you can take some with you if you'd like. There's quartz crystal. It's all over. So we said, sure, that sounds interesting. So we hooked up with the guide at the gate next door to the adjacent property. He takes us to see this crystal vein, which is about a 4 or 5 kilometer walk. And it's hot, really hot that day. And so he says, well, there's a little cave down here, just a little further. We can rest, have some water, some snacks before we head back up. Because mind you, we have just hiked almost straight down the side of a mountain at this point. And we go down another kilometer or so and a half, and we get to this cave, which you can't even see, can't even tell it's a cave. He lifts up the branches, and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And I just said to him, I said, what is a Knights Templar cross doing in the middle of Brazil? And he had no idea. He rattled off a bunch of stuff about women the indigenous women who like to pray in there and create magic. But he really didn't know anything about the Knights Templar. So I photographed everything. I got a short interview of him. And then, of course, we had to get on to a Abadiânia, and we did that whole thing. And then I left Brazil. This was in 2015. Well, 9 days later, when I got home, my house burned to the ground with my entire art career. And 6 weeks after that, I had a liver transplant, which is why I went to a Abadiânia, the Siege of God, which didn't work. So we had to go ahead and follow through with the liver transplant. I had 29 cancer tumors in the previous 4 years. So I had continued to get them, and they finally said, you're going to have to take the liver out. So anyway, had the transplant. My house burned to the ground. I had a year to recover and try to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And this cave discovery wouldn't leave me alone. And it was like, well, what do I do with it? Do I write a book? Do I do a film? What do I do with this discovery? This is actually history changing, this discovery. So I decided, okay, I'm going to research. I'm going to backtrack where the Templars came from. I'm going to talk to the Templars themselves. I'm going to validate this cross. I'm going to validate some of the graffiti that's in there and find out what I can find out. And I'm going to create a film. So that's what I decided to do. So in 2020, my film came out, The Brazilian Templars Mystery. And since then, I have footage for 2 more episodes, which are going to be coming out before the end of this year. And I'm just continuing to research and backtrack. And what I'm finding is phenomenal. The Templars were apparently over there traveling. And as you said, they did leave marks on rocks. That's one of the things we're finding now, that they left marks on rocks along the trails that they took to get to different places, messages for their brothers to follow, that followed behind them. And so I found out that the Templars actually were led into central Brazil, where Alto Paraíso, which is where I found the cave, by the Amazonian tribes. They actually befriended the Amazonian people, and they were assisted by them to get into Alto Paraíso, which is where they basically colonized a little area there. It's a beautiful area. Alto Paraíso means high paradise, and that's basically what they transformed it into. There are every kind of, it's like a little oasis in the middle of Brazil. There's pineapple and papaya and mango and every kind of these huge avocados and just this beautiful territory. And mind you, you're surrounded by upwards of 25 to 30 amazing waterfalls of the most pure water that you can drink it. Today you can still drink it. So they really had discovered a paradise in the center, in the center of Brazil. And then later I was to find out that the cave was actually a gold mine. So,
well, when you brought up the quartz,
really,
when you brought up that quartz vein, that was the first thing I thought of was, oh, Knights Templar. They know what's going on. They know where the gold is.
Absolutely. Where you find quartz, you don't always find gold, but where you find gold, you always find quartz, right? And the old saying. So I had been checking that out, and then I found out for a fact. I interviewed some people in town and found out that there was still some residual gold in there that the locals were still mining. So at the time in 1307, all of the monarchs in Europe were broke. They were dead broke. This is one of the reasons why King Philip the Fair turned on the Templars, because he owed them a great deal of money and his coffers were completely empty. So he had to get himself out of this fix. And that was one of the reasons that he went after and built up all the propaganda to get rid of the Templars so he could get rid of his debt, just clear that debt. Plus he thought he could just, take all their properties and everything that they had. But they had they were one step ahead of him, and they got the treasures and things out, and those were transported to La Rochelle. And some say they went to Scotland. I think they went to Scotland, and I think they also went into Portugal at that time. Because what I've discovered since is that Tomar itself was a very powerful stronghold for the Templars, and they actually had a secret port called Peniche in Portugal that every single king for several hundred years kept secret for the Templars' travel. And it had two commanderies. Every single one of their naval admirals lived there in Peniche for several hundred years. And what I believe was happening, we've later discovered that the Templars were also mining silver in Peru. Sometime between 1190 and 1314, they were traveling back and forth between Peru and Brazil and bringing back gold and silver to the king, whoever the king was in Portugal. This is why Portugal was not broke during that time, which was a mystery. Everybody thought, well, they were just frugal. Well, they had money coming in. They had gold and silver coming in. The Templars were bringing literally boatloads of gold and silver. So this had been going on for a long time. And originally, when the Templars discovered Brazil and discovered South America, they reported it back to the European countries as a very small island, and they called it Veracruz. Veracruz meaning the true cross, so that they wouldn't get suspect and they wouldn't want to come in. Why would they want to bother, if it's just an island? No big deal. Later it was divulged that it was an entire continent. But that gave them, a long time to go back and forth without encumbrance from any of the other monarchs or competition for that gold and silver. So it's a really, really interesting. But some of the graffiti that I found in the cave, I also found on a church in Atugria, which is not far from Peniche, and it matched precisely with those glyphs that I discovered in the church. And this church was dated 1140 to 1190 is when it was built. So we could actually date this cave anytime between, I would say, 1190 and sometime between 1190 and 1314, somewhere in there. They were over there back and forth.
Where could we see these symbols and these petroglyphs?
You can see them on my Facebook page. I believe some of them might even be on my website. But I have two Facebook pages, the Templars in Brazil, that people can go to, and also Kathleen Bell, my Facebook pages. I also post them on Instagram. I've got them on LinkedIn. They're all over. They're in my book.
Kathleen, I got to get your book because I'm always going out looking at petroglyphs. And I mean, seriously, probably once a month, I'm finding new petroglyphs or going out and looking at ones I've already found. And so often I see these carvings. I'm like, that's Knights Templar. I've got this feeling, but then
I would really like to see them, because what
yeah,
I've created now, I'm creating a literal library of what they called Templar Mason marks, that were made on stone in caves, you know, all over. And what I've created is a catalog. I'm cataloging them because I'm finding similar ones all over, everywhere: Spain, France, Portugal. I'm finding in Brazil. I found them in Turkey, for God's sake, in Derinkuyu. I found them all over the place. And so what I'm doing is a comparative study. And another researcher friend of mine, Scott Wolter, he's really doing some serious research and taking these back to what he believes an ancient Sumerian language, that some of these symbols have been found, that he believes the Templars were actually communicating to each other through these symbols. They were not Mason marks. And that's what I've come to believe, because I'm finding them on cave walls. So there's no Mason that created that cave. So why would they put a mark on there to be paid? You see what I mean? The Mason marks were marks that Masons made so they could be reimbursed for their work.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the Sumerian hypothesis is fascinating. I have seen a tablet that appears to be some type of cuneiform that was allegedly found in a mine in Arizona by the Grand Canyon. So, Scott's a great guy. Scott's definitely ahead of the curve. I like Scott. Really cool guy, actually. I'm looking at one of these petroglyphs now. Let me see if this is what you're referring to. Right here.
Yeah. See, those are in France. Now, those are in Dome, France. And this central one here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. This central one right here, and this one here. Okay, this one here, you see this exact one in my cave.
Okay. Now I haven't seen anything like this in the Four Corners. So I have seen crosses. I have seen the crosses, but not on a stand like that. So, and the people that we see, the anthropomorphs out here, are typically much different looking. This is, like the head is kind of proportionate with the arm and stuff. A lot of the anthropomorphs I see are not anywhere close to that. They'll have elaborate headdresses, and a lot of times they're mimicking the kachinas and stuff. But yeah, I would like to talk to you a little bit off air, because there are a few symbols that I don't want everybody to know about that I've seen at several places. That this is it got me all giddy, man. This is pretty cool. I love this stuff.
Well, it's fascinating, because the Templars never died out. They never went, they just went underground. All the evidence that I've been able to that I have uncovered has led me to believe that there was no cease in the line of Templars. They continued all through the 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, survived the Inquisition. They just went underground, and I mean literally went underground. We're uncovering caves and tunnels and all sorts of things now that the Templars used to keep their organization and what they were doing secret. And these caves and things are full of graffiti, iconography, and graffiti. So, Gretchen Cornwall is a very good friend of mine, and she has really done a great deal at deciphering some of the glyphs in the Royston caves in England, which I'll be going to see in August here. I'll be in England doing some research, and I have a couple of lectures coming up there in August. I'll be there the whole month. So I'm going to go and also investigate the Royston cave myself. But they're popping up all over. Another friend of mine just discovered some Templar glyphs under a castle in Austria. So that's another place, that I'm going to be going in and exploring and investigating what's going on over there. But and then when I saw those myself in Derinkuyu underneath, in the underground cave system that people
In
had.
Turkey, right?
Yeah, when I saw them in there, it was just, okay, the Templars were everywhere. All what we have been led to believe is really baloney. So much history is just not true. And I even saw evidence. I didn't see it myself, but a friend of mine showed me photos from India, a coastal town in India, which had 3 Templar crosses on buildings right as she got, right as they got off the ship, and they were on a cruise, and right after she said right when they got off the ship, there were some on some rocks when they got into port, and there was one on the side of a building. So I have reason to believe that the Templars from Peniche were traveling all over the globe. I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't traveling even into Australia. I wouldn't at all. From what we understand, what we put together, Timothy Hogan, I've been working with him quite a bit, and from what we put together is they had possession of the Phoenician maps at that time. Now we know the Phoenicians were traveling all over the globe, by ship. So there was nothing stopping them. The Portuguese were the first the boat builders in all of Europe. They had the first naval ships, navy. They had admirals for 300 years, before the Inquisition came in, that were living in Peniche. And so it stands to reason that there was an entire navy that was stationed in Peniche, and these were made up of Templars. The commanderies at either end of the city of Peniche were huge. On top of that, they had what they called convents, but what they were where they housed the Templars that were learning the nautical skills. So the whole town of Peniche was literally a Templar naval base, that dated all the way back to 1140.
So the official story is the Templars started as essentially a military force or a security force for the Vatican. Is that how it started, or how they?
Well, that's not how it started. How it started was Bernard de Clairvaux. He was the founder of the Cistercian order. And what he was trying to do is clean up the corruption in the Catholic Church by creating the Cistercians. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. People have tried to clean up the corruption in the Catholic Church. So he comes forward with, right? I mean, because it's, anyway, we won't go there. But so here we have him, Bernard de Clairvaux. He's very good friends with these, basically, most of the early Templars were Jewish. These, very prominent families in France and Spain. And so, he gathered these people with his belief systems, and he decided.
I'm sorry. Did I just misheard? Did you say Jewish or Druid?
No, Jewish. They were Jewish.
Okay.
Many of them were Jewish families from the Holy Land. These were ancient Jewish families. And there's something even more interesting about this. I discovered that Zerubbabel in 600 BC organized a band of knights, they were Jewish, from Jewish families, to protect the builders for the Second Temple. And I believe that many of the same, and Timothy Hogan has corroborated this, that they were the same families that came later into Europe and became Templars that we know of, and the founding of the Templar order. So here, Bernard de Clairvaux, he approaches the Pope and says, hey, I've got this military force of men that can come in and help take back the Holy Land, blah, blah, blah. They were already in the Holy Land at that time. And they were staying at the Temple Mount in the stables, which was right above where all the artifacts and tunnel systems were, underneath where the temple had been at one time. So that's where they went. They didn't go to the castle. They went right straight to the Temple Mount grounds, stayed in the stables, which is not the most comfortable place, obviously, and they began excavating underneath the Temple Mount. We found proof. There has been chainmail and other things that have been discovered now under there, so we know for a fact that they were under there. And we don't know exactly what they got, but we do know that the contents of, the treasures and things that had been listed previously in historical records that there were maps, there were genealogies, there were, all sorts of gold artifacts and things that were left there that were hidden during the time of the destruction of the Second Temple. So here we have families that have come forward with family records, family memories, family information. And then we have a reorganization of an order of knights in the 11th century, right? Okay, that have been given the stamp of approval by the Catholic Church. And now they can do whatever they want, right? Which is what they wanted. They lived very piously by the rules that Bernard de Clairvaux helped write for them, right? He was the one that was the mastermind of the rules and bylaws and things that the Templars lived by. And so here we go. Well, it started off as a great idea, but as the Templars grew exponentially, as we know, they were given lands and then flocks of people came to join the Templar order. So by the time of the fall of the Templars, there was probably some peripheral corruption. It just goes to reason, stands to reason. Any organization that gets that big is going to have some corruption. So there was probably some of that going on, which I'm sure contributed to their demise. But there was always a core. There was always a core member of Templars that practiced the esoteric beliefs and initiations that had been passed down. They were sacred. They had been passed down since the time of Sumer, Egypt, all the way forward in time. And now what we're hearing is that it goes all the way back to Atlantis and Lemuria, that these initiation practices were very, very ancient. And what they were trying to do is bring about an enlightenment in Europe. They wanted to be able to enlighten the people, to help them to shake off the shackles of the oppression of the Catholic Church. And so what they did is they created a country, Portugal, which literally means Portugal, Port of the Grail, where the people of the Grail, they're protecting the people of the Grail. Okay. And they lived by this. They created a country where they took in the Druids, the Cathars, the Jews, the Moors, the Muslims, and they all lived harmoniously in this country. And the Catholic Church hated it. I mean, they just hated it. But they had given the Templars their stamp of approval, so they couldn't be hypocrites, and they really couldn't do much. What really pissed them off is when they went after the Cathars, when the Catholic Church went after the Cathars in Montsegur, right? The Templars went and rescued thousands of them and brought them back into Portugal and gave them the whole mountain city and town of Monsanto. I was there just a few months ago, and I found Cathar crosses throughout Portugal. So they not only gave them those lands, but they must have given them other lands as well. And they were also, I found Cathar crosses across on the back of a little church in Tomar that was dedicated to Mary Magdalene. The church itself, the Santa Maria do Olival, has a Cathar church, a Cathar cross on the back of it, which is very difficult to find. And, I show people when I take the tours over there, I show people where these glyphs are. So, but anyway, so bottom line, we have a country that is completely run by Templar principles, harmony, peace, everybody is trading, there's equality amongst the people. This is what they wanted to see in the world. They wanted to translate this to the rest of the world at some point, and they realized that the 1300s was probably not the most ideal time to do this. So they believed that they would come back in 700 years, which is now, and they would implement this plan again and open this up to the world again. So what I believe is what they were doing in the 1300s is planting seeds They were going to all these countries and planting seeds, leaving members of the Templars. And it also, with my research, I've come to believe that many of the Templars, especially in the core of the Templars, were actually members of the bloodline. Yeah, they came from the families of the bloodline. So,
Are you referring to like aristocratic bloodlines that go all the way
yes,
back to the pharaohs, etc.?
yeah, I'm referring to the bloodline Jesus Christ and Mary the Magdalene, the mystical bloodline.
What an exciting presentation. The more I hear and learn about the Knights Templar, the cooler they sound. Pick up a Grell Quest on Amazon. Check out Kathleen's website. I'm going to leave the link in the video description box. Also, if you want to join us over on Patreon for part 2 of this presentation, we get into a lot more information on part 2 over on Patreon. You can be a Patreon for as little as $1, and your contributions greatly help Leak Project. Kathleen's website is templarsinbrazil.com. All right, everybody, I'll see you over on Patreon for part 2 and be the change you want to see.